everyone. Hi, my name's Justin Crosby, and I'm the host of TellyCast, the content industry podcast show and YouTube channel, when I get to speak to the movers and shakers of the international content industry. You can check that out on all podcast platforms and also TellyCast TV on YouTube, so please go and have a check out of that. Brilliant to be here today. What a brilliant event. And we're here to speak to Dan for this session called Making History, Leveraging TV and Podcasting for Bold Brand Partnerships. I'm sure you all know Dan already, but I'll just give you a little recap first of all. Dan's an award-winning history broadcaster and best-selling author. He's made dozens of TV shows for the BBC, Discovery, and lots of other broadcasters as well. He's the host of one of the world's biggest history podcasts with millions of listeners every month, and he's the founder and creative director of History Hit TV, an on-demand history channel described by the Wall Street Journal as the Netflix for history. Dan's worked on every continent, and in 2022 he famously took part in the expedition that located the shipwreck of Ernest Shackleton's Endurance on the Antarctic seabed. So before we get into the session, let's take a quick look at Dan's History Hit platform. Let's have a look at the clip, please. Keeping us in suspense here. We might come back to that actually. Oh, hang on, we might have some movement.
It's not that exciting. It's just lots of pictures of pyramids and stuff.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's come back to the clip in a second. So, Dan, you've been working in broadcasting for a long, long time. Take us through how you've seen the content landscape evolve for the better over the last few years.
Well, I'm sure, like everybody here, well, except I'm older than everybody here, but we've all realised we've switched to digital. And I started working at the BBC at the tail end of this era of linear TV, when the whole country used to sit down and watch one of 4 channels in the evening. There were big budgets, and there were commissioners who controlled your entire life. There was no other possible way of entering the industry. There was no other way of getting your content, your dreams, your ideas to market to viewers, unless you worked with big broadcasters, perhaps the odd newspaper or something like that. But I was young enough vaguely to think, this is a bit bonkers. There's a thing happening called the internet over here, and we need to get content to where people, my generation, are beginning to consume it. And so just through all my time at the BBC and Discovery and elsewhere, I was always messing about, trying to throw a lot of muck and a lot of walls, trying to get something to stick, thinking, how can I achieve the dream that brings us all here today? And that dream is that we can have an idea, we can get funding for that idea, we can make that idea, and we can deliver it to people all over the world. And we do not have to go via gatekeepers, and we don't have to go via, by these tiresome meetings where people say that your ideas are rubbish, which was the experience I had time and time again. And I also knew, I had a little secret, which is I knew that history was a much bigger niche than people gave it credit for. There were 300 million people self-identifying as history fans on Facebook just after it launched, 2008-9. History in the gaming world, in the movies world. If you look at massive releases this year, you've got Gladiator. But you look at Game of Thrones, which is history adjacent. More people go to historical sites every weekend in the UK than go to football matches. So I was aware that I thought history was something broadly defined, obviously. We're not just talking about Henry VIII. We're talking about everything that's ever happened in our past. We're talking about the kings and queens and battles. We're also talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Broadly defined, that is something that people want to know more about, want to listen to great stories about, and we can tell those stories on audio, on video, SVOD and AVOD platforms. So that was my idea, and it's happening. And now I've got Chloe here from History Today. We sit down on Monday morning, we decide what we're going to make, we make it, we broadcast it Thursday afternoon, we get paid, we have a great weekend.
So that's brilliant. So the gatekeepers have gone to a greater extent. You can commission pretty much whatever you want to commission, right? And what is the key type of content that you want to commission? What makes a project the perfect project for you to commission?
So what works for us? There's several things work for us. One, on audio, what works for us is the history behind the headlines. So current affairs, people want to know Israel, Gaza, is Trump a fascist? They want to know North-South Korea when it's in the news. Those do very well for us on audio, and some of those explainers do well on AVOD, Instagram and YouTube. On SVOD, which is more people watching on bigger screens at home, more traditional TV viewing, although our audience is about 20, 30 years younger than traditional TV channels. They're more glossy, it's more ancient civilizations. The Americans, most of our subscribers are based in the US. The Americans adore medieval European history, castles, knights, all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's a real mix depending on the platform. But at the heart of it, obviously, is just great stories, very visual stories. Ancient civilization still does very well. You put a drone up above the pyramids, you put a drone up above Angkor Wat or Pompeii, or recently we're at Machu Picchu. Those shows do very well as well.
So you started History Hit as a podcast, and just tell us a little bit about how that audio storytelling drives results and captivates audience, and how you build that into original video.
Well, we're all living in the world of the podcast at the moment. You guys all listen to podcasts, you all know this now, but I think you've got to take your mind back 10 years when we were used to very highly produced, we were listening to audio content that was a producer's idea of what we wanted to hear, and what's very exciting about podcasts, they're very democratic. You can just go and listen to your favourite historian, your favourite musicologist, your favourite American elections geek, just talk kind of in that unedited, unfiltered way, perhaps with a friend, a buddy show, and that's what made them very popular. And so I think the kind of longer form, the more unvarnished way of broadcasting has proved very popular. For me, what's been very exciting is trying to slide into that niche between history and current affairs, which I didn't think anyone was really in, so that when a big story breaks, when Boris Johnson did something completely agree, when Liz Truss resigned, the shortest tenure Prime Minister this country's ever had, boom, within 48 hours I had a podcast out about shortest Prime Ministers in British history, or times in British history before when we've had rapid turnover of leaders. Or when William and Harry really kicked off, I had a nice episode about royal siblings going after each other. And that's something that's really, the audience liked, I think, that immediacy. And then the fact they can also interact with it, they can request those episodes as well.
Obviously, the frequency of podcasting, is it weekly show on podcast?
We're 3 times a week.
3 times a week.
We're squeezing that cash cow.
And presumably that access to data that podcasting gives you, and also streaming gives you, helps build better shows and understanding what your audience is looking for.
Yeah, you're right. It's a really good point. With that volume of broadcast, of outputs, we get a huge amount of data about what people want to hear about. You guys all know this, titling, the importance of the title. You can rebroadcast an old episode, change the title, it will just do bonkers numbers. So we are, whether it's asking questions in titles, whether it's greatest of, top 5, we mess around with all these, and we're able to commission so quickly that we're able to learn a huge amount. Be that on SVODs, on AVOD, or on social video, and then particularly on audio, where we do it. Yeah, we produce vast amounts of podcasts a week.
So there might be an assumption that history programming is for an older audience. I mean, traditionally, I suppose, when you're talking about BBC and linear channels, it does appeal to an older audience. What about podcasting and digital video?
Well, we know the answer to those things now, right? Because we got the data. And when I was young, I went to the BBC, and I was briefly an exciting young person. And their BBC's idea at the time was that they would put me on in a slot making history, which was 9 o'clock on a Friday night, which I just thought, what are you doing? I mean, it's like the most insane thing I've ever heard. And so surprisingly, perhaps, those programs were watched by people in their early 60s, which is fine. But it's an odd strategy to pursue, I thought, at the time. And what we've learned is that young people are very interested in factual content. They were being underserved by traditional media. Our typical subscriber is a young woman in her 30s watching on an iPhone in the US of A, which goes against everything anyone ever gets told about history. Our TV viewers, we're younger by about 20-25 years than BBC Two, younger than Channel 4 obviously as well. I mean, they skew very old, those linear channels. Podcasting, we're able to gather a lot of data, but we're also we've polled our audience. We've had thousands of responses. So we're able to tell brands things like, you know, the majority of our audience and jobs making over $100,000 a year, stuff like that. So we have a lot of visibility over the people listening and where they are and who they are and what they like.
And what we've seen, I think, over the last sort of certainly 10 years is that younger audiences, authenticity resonates with them. And when you come to factual programming, you have to get your historical facts right. So what's that combination that works then on history here of authenticity and historical accuracy?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the answer is a bit of a pain in the arse. And I'm always quite jealous of other podcasts where they can just spout nonsense, have a laugh. And I'm just like, I'm spouting nonsense and someone's going to fact check it all and let me know on my Twitter feed. So the answer is you've got to be very cautious. But you've got to get things right. You're absolutely right. I think the thing is that we've realised that young people, the world has gone to hell in a handcarts in 2008 in particular. Young people are seriously engaged with that. Young people studying history at university has spiked since 2008 in the US. People want to know what is happening. They want to know why they can't afford to get on the housing ladder. They want to know why the traditional, they want to know why Russia's invaded Ukraine, why young people are fighting in Europe. They want to know why young babies are dying in Gaza. You know, young people, just like anybody else, are incredibly engaged with the world around them. They want to know about the climate crisis. They want to know about the policy failures of the previous generations that have led to decisions not being made that could try and stave off an existential climate threat. And so we have, I think, by taking young people seriously, not underestimating them, understanding they want to access to these kind of conversations, I think we've been very surprised in which podcasts have done well. And the great thing about history is you can pivot from climate crisis to how real is Bridgerton, and then have a bit of a laugh talking about, you know, Henry VIII's corpse bursting where they tried to jam it into the coffin. And all of those things are perfectly legitimate. You know, history is everything that's ever happened to anyone. We've got a very broad canvas, and it's nice to dance around and see what sticks.
So we're here talking about brands today and brands and history. How does that work together then?
Well, we've been very lucky. Obviously history involves lots of travel. It involves adventure travel. We've worked with car brands. We've visited, you know, we've walked across the Andes to look for Inca ruins. I've been to some of the world's most remote islands. I've supported working alongside brands for travel brands. Another huge area of history is, as I kind of refer to as popular culture. So Napoleon came out last year, Oppenheimer, massive movies. We worked really closely with Sony on the Napoleon release, which was all going really well until Ridley Scott and I had an altercation about historical accuracy in the movie, and I got uninvited to the premiere. It's incredibly annoying. Anyway, but apart from that, all the brand things gone really well, everyone. And so we have worked with travel, obviously a lot. I've worked with British Airways in the past. We've worked with Lloyds. Lloyds Bank sponsored the Spitfire during the Second World War. It crashed in Somerset, so we went and dug it up for them. So, you know, brands have a history. Brands have an interest in projecting certain things about themselves, and we feel that history can really deliver on that. And at the moment we're working with two gaming companies, both of whom have historical games. We're an official partner of the new Assassin's Creed game, which is now set in Japan, and we have got a whole always-on podcast strand that we've just launched, supporting historical content for that new gaming sensation. So yeah, that's been a whole unexpected bonus for me, that when we're talking about these things, brands want to come work with us and allow us to make much better content. The brand's happy and our audience is happy because we're just making higher quality content.
Okay, so I've just got the nod that we can actually see the clip, and it's brilliant actually. So let's please look at the clip.
This is the story of a remarkable new discovery.
I've come to the very northern edge of Jordan. This is
pretty spectacular to me.
Yes, I can't tell you how exciting it is.
As Gladiator spectators felt little concern for the fate of the fighters themselves.
There are lots of different attempts to derive the word Lugo. It comes from the noise of thunder.
This is the hidden story of the real people behind the peasants' revolt.
Actually, let's make sure that Sancho's name is never forgotten.
Like all wonderful discoveries, it now raises for us a series of further mysteries to be explored.
So yeah, that's another thing that does very well for us. Is this might sound a bit geeky to you guys, but they're like their little history scoops. And actually, you'll see about once or twice a week something will come up in your social media. A shipwreck will be found, like we found Shackleton's Endurance last year. It was on the front page of the New York Times. But there's there's another Shackleton ship was found the other day. Professor Susanna Lipscomb there found a prayer book. We can turn those films around very, very quickly, and they do very well across all our different formats. So we do well when there's zeitgeisty history stories out there, and then we can jump on them and take advantage of that because we can move super fast. And lastly, I would say you saw Patterson Joseph there, saw Tony Robinson. Because we offer ourselves as a good place for talent to come and work, our shooting ratio is pretty good. We're not onerous when it comes to scripting and execs, bully. Talent likes working with us because we're like, we can't afford you for that long. Why would we bother shooting 10-piece cameras with you and then cutting 8 of them out? Come and make a show, come and make your passion piece. Patterson Joseph made his whilst Wonka was out, we got Patterson Joseph making a TV show about a key abolitionist in the 18th century. We worked with him intensely for about 3 days, and we got a lovely show out of that, and that's evergreen content as well.
We're talking about Ridley Scott. Gladiator 2 is going to be coming out later in the year.
We noticed, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see if it's forgive and forget, or probably mostly forget, and he won't know that he's worked with me before. But yeah, so we're talking to Paramount about Gladiator 2, which will be a huge release. And again, it's great because Gladiators are, we're not compromising our audience. Our audience love Roman history, love gladiators. The movie Paramount, I think they'll be happy that we're out there talking about it. We can do a bit of crossover. And also we end up with content on our platform that we can use for years to come. Because Gladiators, it's not going to be sort of absolutely tied to that movie release. The Gladiator package we're coming up with will be of interest 5, 10, 20 years' time. That's the good thing about history. It keeps coming around again. The D-Day anniversary is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. So just coming back to the Ubisoft brand partnership that you did, can you just expand on that a little bit and tell us, because that, I think, moved into YouTube as well as being a podcast.
Yeah, thank you. So Ubisoft, we've done some work with Ubisoft over the years for factual wraparound content around its, obviously its massively successful games. We've just developed an always-on podcast, so looking at the history behind the characters and the storylines that are based on reality in that game. And now because we've got considerably over a million YouTube followers now, so brands are increasingly interested in projects that go between our audio and our AVOD offer as well. So that's proving quite successful. So it's if you're making this content anyway, as you all know, if you're making this content anyway, it's really not hard to do podcast with a kind of visual thing. So you move into AVOD. If you want to spend more money, we kind of get to our SVOD levels. So we can take a piece of content, we can film it from different angles and different ways, and we end up being able to put it out on so many different platforms and monetizing it and getting eyeballs on it across all of these different platforms. So it's really satisfying.
Yeah, I bet it is. That's being able to produce something that you want to produce and seeing commercial opportunities within that as well. So, talking about brands, what would you say your perfect dream brand partner would be? Then?
Well, I think it would be travel. I think the thing about history is that it happens that what we've learned, and if you look at recent Netflix successes, on the big stream, the world's biggest platforms, people really love to be transported to remarkable places, and they do use that as the basis for their own holiday and travel decisions. I get stopped by lots of people in foreign locations going, oh my God, we're here because of a show that you made or Lucy Worsley or someone else made. And so I think we've worked with cruise lines a lot, which are great because I love the sea and the world is best approached from the sea, as you all know. So, but I think with airlines, I would love to make, I'd love to expand on 50 Things to See Before You Die, world's greatest historical sites, world's greatest UNESCO World Heritage Sites, things like that. And it strikes me that you could work with travel brands to create a kind of create around the world in 80 days vibe that people can actually go and do themselves. And I would love that because my passion is seeing these places. No matter how many times we see them on screens or screens big and small, nothing beats. I was in Petra a couple of weeks ago in Jordan. Nothing beats being in Petra, watching the sun go down on that rose red stone. You know, nothing beats going up hiking the Inca Trail, which I did just before Christmas for a show we co-produced with Channel 5. So I'm driven by visiting those places, learning about them, meeting the people that live there and are preserving them and conserving them. So I think working with some kind of travel brand to just really get round the world would be fun.
Okay, and how does any travel brand get in touch with History Hit?
That's a terrific question. I guess they can talk to... I guess they just approach. We got our Jen at our sales. We're part of Little Dots, the studios that you guys will know. We got Jen Jen Bennett, who does all our brand alignment, our sales, managed the Ubisoft that she's brought that in, for example. So Jen Bennett at History Hit would be great. But yeah, if not, just send me an Insta direct message.
All right. Okay. We're told we've got to wind up now. So please give it up for Dan Snow.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.